Hello, gang. Um, okay, it's Sunday. I'm sorry, Saturday, about 1:24 my time, Eastern time. So I know you guys are right in the middle of your Saturday on a weekend, a long weekend at that. But I felt it necessary to go over a couple of things. In lieu of individual consults. So the information that I'll be talking about, of course, will go out to the whole class. If it applies to you, ask questions if you don't understand, or if it doesn't apply to you and you have a handle on these things, then great. All right, let's talk about your data collection part of your research. Okay, so a lot of you are doing a mixed method. All right, so quantitative and qualitative, right? And so your data collection with quantitative and qualitative are very different. With quantitative, and I know you've heard this, but with quantitative, you're counting things. You're taking a measure of something. In most of your cases, it's an intervention, right, that you're applying to your students. And whether it's a check-in, check-out, an on-task check sheet, a check sheet for the length of time for on-task behavior, or whatever the case may be, you're measuring frequency and length of time, okay? And those would be check sheets or data collection sheets, and you need to name each one. You need to have at least two that are different and that measure different items, right? So you might have one that measures time on task, and then another that measures number of distractions, okay? So you would delineate with those. Now, and you may have a check sheet or a collection sheet where you use tallies, all right? For every, like in special ed, we have to do progress monitoring. Well, you might be doing tally marks per interval, and you might be a 10-minute interval with, every minute or a minute and a half or whatever the setup is, you're measuring in quantitative. Now, in qualitative is the root word, quality, right? So you're measuring the quality or something, or what qualifies a measure, such as observational data. You're going to have points of observation for a particular behavior, attitude, distraction, following instructions or procedures or process, that kind of thing. Like, for instance, I think it's Lisa who's doing self-advocacy, what the difference is in behavior for students self-advocating, right, after receiving the instruction. So she's going to be measuring as well as looking at the quality. Is there true commitment from the student or adherence by the student to that expected behavior, right? So For those of you who want to use a survey for qualitative, call it a questionnaire. And if you, all right, think about it this way. If you do a survey amongst your students or your colleagues, then what is it that you're trying to elicit from those surveys? All right, or questionnaires. You want relevant and helpful information that will help define the results that you're looking at. That helps you in your data analysis when you start to analyze and interpret your data, okay, which is the next step. So you don't really want to use yes or no questions. You know, for instance, if I had a survey to do from a haircutting place, right? I don't know what you guys have out there, but whatever. So, you know, a haircutting place. You know, how was your experience today? You know, good or bad? Positive or negative? There's no in between, right? So, a lot of surveys or questionnaires that you will see will have a range, like 5 choices. That's called, technically speaking, that's called a Likert scale, Likert, Likert scale. And so in using a Likert scale with a questionnaire or a survey, you give choices of answers, you know, to very unsatisfied to greatly satisfied, 1 to 5, right? And we'll talk about how to interpret that data. But you would have a range of responses, right? But not a yes or no. Yes or no survey questions don't tell you anything. That, you know, did you like your haircut experience today? Well, maybe I did kinda, you know. I liked it more than to say no, but I really wasn't completely satisfied to say yes. So, you know, if I were to say yes, then that wouldn't give you the true data. You wouldn't really know how I was feeling about my haircutting experience, right? So you have to use a scale with your questionnaires and your surveys. All right. And as far as the number of questions, you can have minimum of 5, 10 or so questions on a questionnaire. It's good. You could do 7. You need to elicit or ask for enough information on a questionnaire that's going to give you a clear picture of how that individual, be it a student, a parapro, or a colleague, actually feels. Okay, and so with on the qualitative side, observation and open-ended questions are usually the go-to. All right. Describe, for example, describe describe how effective this training was using it the first time. Okay, that's going to give you a lot of information. And so you'd be able to pick through that, especially if you had 5, say you were doing training for 5 of your colleagues on how to deal with your special ed students in their classes. Okay, so you go through this little short training with them, with a PowerPoint or whatever. So you go through this short training, and then in order to know what they're thinking and what their level of understanding is, in that scenario, you give them a questionnaire, either with a survey questionnaire or with open-ended questions. Um, and then the observation data, which is also referred to as anecdotal data, is when you go in and observe how they are implementing what you trained them on. And then you compare all those pieces of information. What does it tell you? You know, was your training effective? Did you get across what you wanted to get across to your colleagues? Are they implementing it correctly, or are they taking shortcuts or leaving parts of it out? Follow me? Get my drift on this? Does this make sense? So think about your data collection instruments, and listen. Google is your friend. Google it. You have a textbook, I know, and I've read in your textbook for this class. It doesn't really tell you a whole lot. Doesn't really get into it, unfortunately. So you use Google, and Google, sample survey questions for educational, for action research in education. I just Googled that. All right, and I'm going to post that in an email to you here in just a few. But I wanted to, because I know that some of you are working, or all of you are working on this weekend, at least some anyway, a bit of time. Because next week is the next 2 weeks are going to be just rapid fire. Okay, you got to be on it every day, because we have something coming every day, and it's a lot. I get it. It's a lot. I'm right there with you, because I haven't been with you through and during your other courses on the research, or if this is your first one. I know a couple of you, it's your first one, I think, if I recall right. And so there are things that I'm having to ask questions about, then I relay them to you as far as what the university and what the IRB will accept as standard. Like no yes or no questions for surveys or questionnaires. So that's one of the reasons why I'm passing all this information on to you, because this is like, I feel like we're going down a whitewater river, and we're all in the same boat or raft, and I got to make sure that we're all paddling in the same direction, or the correct direction, right? So that we don't flip over. So I wanted to get this info out to you ASAP, because as I read through some of your critical friend exchanges, and I hope you don't mind my commenting here and there on those, partly because I want you to know that I am reading them, but also to hopefully add helpful information to you. My role is to help you, and I've been through this. It was a little different back in my day. We didn't have all the tools. We had to do all this by hand. We didn't have all the digital tools and capabilities that you guys have today. Certainly, we didn't have Google. I barely had PowerPoint at that point in time. But anyway, shoot me a question if you're totally confused, or if you have questions, or shoot me an email or text if you have questions or are totally confused on what you're to do. Someone mentioned in one of the conversations about expected due dates. If you look at each of the, and I recommend you do this if you haven't already, if you look at each of the assignments, the due dates are there. So I know I mentioned early on at the beginning of the course to take the time. I know you're all feeling pressure right now, but take the time, if you haven't already, to sit down and put your assignments in your phone, in your computer. Um, uh, if you're old school and still have a paper calendar or calendar book, put it there. Just keep yourself on schedule, and that will help um, a lot. It helps me, and I've used a calendar for years, and and so I put everything in my calendar. So do that. Contact me if you have a question. Don't panic. Uh, you know, all questions are good questions. Just ask it, and we'll get through this one step at a time. So just work on your data collection instruments and name them each, at least two per type of research. Okay, so two for quantitative, two for qualitative. Okay, the research period would be 4 weeks where you would get data. We could talk individually about your particular situation. I know there are some variances out there as far as being in a resource room, semi-inclusion, therapeutic room. It's a good variety with you guys. So we'll talk about that individually, but be working on your IRB credentials. Get those in order. You're going to have that. Be working on all your consent forms. There are two new consent forms. There's a parent form and an institutional form that Dr. Mickelson has uploaded to your Moodle resources, which is always on the left-hand side. That's your left-hand side. If you have a question about that, let me know, and I'll tell you how to get to all that. But it's listed under there under week 3. I know that's a lot, but go through each one and print a copy down, have a notebook. That's what I do. I have to refer back to it. It just helps me stay on track. What else? Let me say this one more time, and I'll say this again several times, just because has been emphatically emphasized, or pressed with us, the instructors, is that you as a student do not apply directly to the IRB. Do not send your information into IRB. You send it to me first. We work through it, get it right. Then I send it to Dr. Mickelson. She tweaks it, makes it right, sends it back. We go through all that process. When it's perfect, then she will submit it to IRB in batches. Now, also, I sent you through email yesterday, I believe it was, the 2-page checklist on am I ready to submit my IRB application. All right, that's my list also. Use it as your list. It will keep all of us on track. And if you have questions about a particular piece, make a note, and we'll go over that either in a group setting like tomorrow, if you can make the class meeting tomorrow night, or through individual consultations. We'll have more than 2 per student, by the way. There's too many moving parts just to have two individual meetings. I hope you guys would agree. Anyway, all right. I think that's plenty for now. Have a good Sunday, or Saturday rather. I'm a day ahead of myself. It's raining here. It's supposed to be colder than a witch's broom next week for us, going down to 4 degrees, 5 degrees, 8 degrees. In the mountains of North Georgia where I live. That's pretty severe for us. So I have to drive back from Charleston, South Carolina, where I am now, keeping my granddaughter. I'll leave tomorrow morning and go back home. It's about a 5.5 hour drive, give or take. So I look forward to our conversation tomorrow evening. If you can't get on, shoot me an email just so I know what's happening. I promise I'll try to keep it like 30 minutes or less, just to, because I just want to touch base with everybody and see where everybody is and maybe have I anticipate having some discussion about some common concerns. So that's the main reason for wanting you guys to log on if you can. If you can't, understand. Family and family life come first, and so just touch base with me. Okay, all right. You guys have a good rest of your Saturday.